On Christmas night in Savannah, my wife looked me dead in the eye and said, "My mother doesn't want you here." Then my suitcase hit the porch like I was a stranger. Minutes later, a police car rolled up because someone had called in a domestic disturbance. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just stood there, realizing this wasn't a family argument. It was a setup, and if I stayed silent, I'd lose more than a marriage. If stories like this feel familiar, stay with this channel, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you're not the only one who's been pushed out of your own life. And when you're ready, tell me in the comments, what was the moment you realized you had to stop staying quiet? I had spent the whole day doing what I always did, keeping things steady. A quick run through Target for last-minute wrapping paper. A grocery stop for eggnog, the kind Jaden liked when he stayed with me. A video call with my son in the afternoon, where he held up the new basketball I'd shipped to his mom's place and grinned like I'd handed him the world. "You coming to my game after New Year's?" he asked. "Wouldn't miss it," I told him. That promise sat in my chest all day, like a small, warm weight. It kept me polite. It kept me quiet. By late afternoon, Tasha and I were already on the road to Savannah, heading to her family's rental house for Christmas dinner. I'd made the drive from Atlanta enough times to know where the traffic always thickened, where the gas stations were, where the cops liked to sit. It was routine, the kind of routine you build when you're trying to make a second marriage feel like home. At 45, I'd learned how to do that, how to show up, how to smile at the right moments, how to swallow words when swallowing felt easier than fighting. Deborah, my mother-in-law, greeted us like she was greeting guests at a fundraiser. Hug for Tasha, a quick pat for me, eyes already moving past my shoulder. "You parked in the neighbor's spot last time," she said, like it was a stain that needed scrubbing. "This time, be mindful." I nodded. I always nodded. Inside, the kitchen ran like her command center. Deborah pointed. People moved. Tasha floated in and out, trying to keep the peace without ever calling it what it was. I set the gifts under the tree and started washing dishes without being asked, because I knew what happened when I didn't. Deborah watched me for a second, then handed me a bag of trash. "Take this out," she said, "and make sure the cans are lined. We don't do things sloppy here." The word we landed wrong. Like I wasn't part of it. I took the bag anyway. Back inside, I felt my phone vibrate. Work. A message from my assistant about a compliance report that needed my approval Monday morning. I stepped toward the hallway, just to answer quickly, but Deborah's hand reached out before I could. She took my phone, just like that. "Work on Christmas?" she said, scrolling without hesitation. "That's your problem. Always distracted." My stomach tightened. A private reflex. The same one I got when HR called my office out of nowhere. The same one I got when my ex-wife used to accuse me of things I didn't do. My hand lifted slightly, then stopped in the air. Tasha saw it. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then to her mother, then away. No words, no protest, just silence. Deborah kept scrolling, lips pressed as if she was searching for something to use later. I didn't grab it back. I didn't snap. I told myself it wasn't worth ruining the night, so I stood there, smiling like a man who wasn't being stripped in front of his own wife. When I finally got my phone back, I walked out to the front porch. The air had bite to it, and for a minute, the quiet felt like mercy. I leaned on the railing and stared at the street like it could give me an answer. Just get through dinner, I told myself. Just one more night. A door opened behind me, soft footsteps. Tasha's voice came out flat, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized in the car. "My mother doesn't want you here." I turned. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad either. She looked managed. Deborah stood behind her in the doorway, arms crossed, face calm like she was watching a decision get carried out exactly the way she planned. A suitcase slid across the floor and bumped into my shin. "Take your things," Deborah said, "and don't make this harder than it has to be." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Tasha stayed still, hands tight at her sides, as if she'd been told not to touch me. The porch light flickered once, and then my feet moved on their own, stepping outside with the suitcase handle cold in my palm, my heart pounding like I'd been caught doing something shameful. The door clicked shut behind me, while my fingers were still wrapped around the zipper, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The zipper on the suitcase caught, and my hands fumbled with it like they didn't belong to me. I tried again, forced it shut, then looked at the house like someone might step back out and say this was all a misunderstanding. Instead, headlights washed across the driveway. A patrol car rolled up slow and deliberate, like it already knew what it was walking into. Two officers stepped out. One stayed closer to the car. The other approached me with his palm half raised. "Sir," he said, calm but firm. "Have you been drinking tonight?" I blinked once. "No." "We got a call. Domestic disturbance. The woman inside says she feels unsafe." The words hit hard because they weren't an argument anymore. They were a label, a story that would travel faster than any truth I could speak. I kept my voice level. "My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm her husband. I work in corporate compliance in Atlanta. I don't have any weapons. I haven't touched anyone." The officer nodded like he'd heard that line before. "We need you to step away from the doorway." I took 2 steps down from the porch without making a scene. Pride wanted me to demand answers, but pride was useless in front of badges. If I reacted wrong, even once, I'd hand them exactly what they were hoping for. The second officer moved toward the front door and knocked. Deborah opened it right away, like she'd been waiting behind it with her hand on the knob. Her face didn't carry panic or tears. She looked composed, prepared. "Thank you for coming," she said. "He's been aggressive. We just want him gone." My jaw clenched, not because I wanted to shout, because I knew shouting wouldn't matter. Tasha stood behind her, eyes red, shoulders tight. She didn't meet my gaze. She stared at the floor like it was safer than looking at me. I tried anyway. "Tasha, I need my coat and my blood pressure medication. It's in my overnight bag." Deborah didn't even hesitate. "No, he's not coming back inside." I looked at the officer again. "Sir, I'm not trying to start anything. I just need my medication." He turned slightly toward Deborah. "Ma'am, can he retrieve his personal items?" "Absolutely not," she said, voice crisp. "He'll find an excuse to stay. He can get it later." Tasha's lips parted, like she might speak. Then they closed again. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and stayed silent. The officer didn't argue. He turned back to me. "You need to leave the property for tonight. If you return, it could escalate into something you don't want." Something you don't want. I almost laughed, but it came out like a short breath through my nose. Because I already understood what this was. They weren't trying to end a fight. They were building a record. I picked up the suitcase. My fingers felt stiff, like the cold had crawled into my joints. I walked down the steps, past the officers, past the car, past the part of myself that still believed marriage meant protection. At the edge of the driveway, I stopped and looked back. Deborah hadn't moved. Tasha still wouldn't look up. The officers stood between us like a line you couldn't cross. Neighbors' curtains shifted. A porch light across the street clicked on. In that moment, I felt something worse than sadness. I felt my name being rewritten. I got into my car and drove until the tightness in my chest eased a little. A Walmart parking lot showed up like a refuge. Bright, busy, anonymous. I parked far from the entrance and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slow through my nose like my therapist used to teach me after my first divorce. Phone buzzed again. Not work this time. A text from an unknown number. "Leave it alone. Go home." I stared at it, then opened my call log. 2 missed calls from Tasha. No voicemail. For a second, a part of me wanted to call her back, hear her voice, beg for the truth. Instead, I tapped Elena Cruz's number. We hadn't spoken in months, not since I'd helped her cousin keep his job after a compliance mess. She picked up on the second ring. "Marcus, I need you to listen," I said. "Something's happening." She didn't ask for details first. She didn't offer comfort. Her tone stayed clear, almost clinical. "Do not talk to them anymore. Don't argue. Don't explain. Start saving everything. Screenshots, emails, call logs. Tonight." That was it. One sentence that cut through the fog. I hung up, opened my phone, and began taking screenshots. Every text, every missed call, every timestamp. My thumb moved fast, not angry, just focused. When I finally drove back toward the hotel, my suitcase sat in the passenger seat like proof of something I still couldn't say out loud. Inside the lobby, I checked in under my name, signed the receipt, and kept my face neutral while the clerk smiled like this was just another holiday guest. Upstairs, the room door shut behind me, and my phone kept lighting up with silence. The hotel coffee tasted like cardboard, but it was hot, and it kept my hands busy. I signed the checkout slip, slid my keycards across the counter, and walked out without looking back at the little Christmas wreath hanging on the lobby door. The drive from Savannah to Atlanta usually felt like a reset. You leave the coast, the air changes, the scenery flattens out, and your mind has time to settle into something normal. That morning, nothing settled. My phone rang an hour into the drive. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then answered anyway. Hello? A woman's voice came through, soft and careful. Marcus? This is Sister Pauline from Deborah's church. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. No, ma'am. What's going on? She paused, like she was choosing her words the way people choose clothes for a funeral. I just wanted to check on you. I heard Tasha was frightened last night. People said it got heated. There it was, the first rumor, already dressed up and sent out into the world. Nothing got heated, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch anyone. She murmured. Not fully convinced, not fully accusing either. I'm glad to hear that. You know how people talk. I knew. That was the problem. She said a quick prayer over the phone, asked God to bring peace, and hung up. The call left a sour taste that the coffee couldn't wash away. The story had jumped the walls of that rental house and landed in a place where people believed Deborah by default. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tasha. One line. I need time. No explanation, no apology, just a sentence that sounded like a door closing. I texted back. I'm not angry. I just need to understand what happened. The message stayed on delivered. No reply. By the time I reached Atlanta, my shoulders ached from holding myself together. I pulled into the parking deck at my building, rode the elevator up, and walked into the apartment like I expected her to be there, sitting on the couch, ready to talk. The place looked untouched, her shoes still by the entryway, her favorite mug on the drying rack, a half-finished candle on the kitchen counter. Then my inbox pinged. An email from Deborah Lane. No greeting, no warmth, just bullet points. Do not contact our family. Do not contact Tasha directly. Any communication will go through counsel. Property list attached. Items belonging to Tasha in your residence. I opened the attachment. It read like an inventory after a death. Sofa throw, jewelry box, KitchenAid mixer, the blue suitcase, the pearl earrings. My jaw set, not from anger, more from disbelief. She wasn't treating me like a husband. She was treating me like a liability to be managed. For a few minutes, doubt crept in, quiet and poisonous. Maybe I should have spoken up earlier. Maybe I let too much slide. Maybe that's why they thought they could do this. Then I stopped myself. No, that wasn't guilt. That was conditioning. The kind that makes you apologize for being shoved. I hadn't abused anyone. I hadn't threatened anyone. I'd been thrown out, then framed like a danger. That was the truth, even if it sounded unreal. At the office, I nodded at my assistant, gave her a tired smile, and went straight to my desk. The monitor came to life. Emails stacked up, meetings on the calendar, people walking past my door like everything was normal. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it one word, Savannah. Inside it, I dragged every screenshot I'd taken the night before. The unknown number telling me to leave it alone, the missed calls, Deborah's email, the photo of my suitcase sitting on that porch like a warning. Then I created a document and started a timeline. Date, time, what happened, who said what. Simple, clean, the kind of thing I'd do for any investigation. That evening, I drove home and called Jaden. He answered on the first ring, out of breath, like he'd been running around the house. Dad, guess what? Coach said I'm starting next game. That's my guy, I said, and my voice almost cracked. He kept talking about school, about a kid who got in trouble for vaping, about how his mom bought the wrong kind of cereal. Normal kid stuff, the kind that reminded me why I worked so hard to stay stable. You still coming, right? He asked again. I swallowed. Yeah, I said. I'm coming. After we hung up, I stared at the living room for a long second, at the quiet space where Tasha's laughter used to be, and I opened the folder one more time to make sure everything was there. The email hit my inbox at 10:17 a.m. Subject: Urgent. Please report to conference room B at 2 p.m. No context, no sender name I recognized, just HR. I stared at it longer than I should have. In my line of work, you learn to read tone without a single extra word. Urgent from HR didn't mean a scheduling mix-up. It meant someone had dropped a match near gasoline. I went through the rest of my morning like I was underwater, answered 2 calls, signed off on a routine compliance memo, nodded at a coworker in the hallway, and smiled when he joked about eating leftovers for lunch. At 1:58, I stood up, straightened my shirt, and walked to conference room B. 2 HR reps sat at the table. One was a woman named Karen I'd seen at company trainings. The other was a younger guy with a laptop open, eyes fixed on the screen like he didn't want to look at me too long. Karen gestured to the chair. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please have a seat." I sat, hands folded, back straight, the way my father taught me to sit when something serious was happening. She slid a printed packet across the table. "We received an anonymous complaint," she said. "It alleges misconduct that we have to take seriously." I didn't touch the packet yet. "What kind of misconduct?" The younger guy cleared his throat. "Financial manipulation," he said. "Abuse of authority. And personal threats." Karen's voice stayed professional, but her eyes shifted, just slightly. "It also mentions concerns about employee safety." I opened the packet and skimmed it fast. My brain clicked into the same mode it used in investigations. Scan, categorize, identify patterns. The words were messy, but intentional. He intimidates people. He's unstable. He threatens his wife. He uses his position to hide wrongdoing. He is dangerous. You should protect your employees. My throat tightened, not because it hurt, because it was calculated. This wasn't someone mad about a performance review. This was someone trying to paint me into a corner where I couldn't move without looking guilty. I looked up. "Do you have any evidence attached to this complaint?" Karen shook her head. "No. But we have to open an inquiry when allegations involve safety." "I understand the policy," I said. "I also understand liability." The younger guy typed something quickly, like my tone was being recorded in real time. I kept my voice even. "I'm requesting a copy of everything you have in writing. I'm also requesting that all communication with me about this matter be documented." Karen blinked. "Of course. And I will cooperate," I added. "But I will be involving legal counsel." The word counsel changed the temperature in the room. Karen's posture stiffened. The younger guy looked up, finally, and I saw a flicker of caution in his face. "That's your right," Karen said. I slid the packet back toward them. "Before we go further, I need to clarify something. I've never threatened anyone in this company. I've never abused my position. If someone is trying to connect my personal life to my professional integrity, then this complaint isn't about compliance. It's about retaliation." Karen didn't answer that. She just nodded again, like she was checking boxes. "For now, we're asking you not to contact any coworkers about this situation," she said. "We'll be conducting interviews." "Understood," I said. When the meeting ended, I walked back to my office without rushing. People passed me in the hall, smiling, carrying coffee, talking about holiday plans like the floor beneath my life wasn't shifting. Inside my office, I shut the door and stood still for a moment. No anger, no panic, just a quiet realization settling into my bones. Deborah didn't stop at throwing me out. She came for my name. I left the building later that afternoon and crossed the parking lot toward my car. Trucks rumbled on the nearby road. A delivery driver waved as he backed into a loading dock. Ordinary noise, ordinary workday, ordinary everything, except my hands were shaking when I unlocked the door. I sat behind the wheel and pulled out my phone. Elena answered on the first ring. "Marcus." "They called me into HR," I said. "Anonymous complaint. Says I'm dangerous." There was a short pause, then her voice sharpened. "Do you have a prenup?" "Not a full one," I said. "We talked about it. Never finished." "Any shared accounts?" "Yes." "Doorbell cam?" "Ring system." "Good," she said. "Stop speaking to anyone outside your lawyer. Save everything. And Marcus, don't underestimate what she's willing to do." I looked at the HR packet on my passenger seat, then at the Savannah folder on my laptop at home, and my thumb hovered over my call log as I searched for my attorney's number. My key stuck in the lock for half a second, like the apartment didn't recognize me anymore. I turned it again, pushed the door open, and nearly stepped on the envelope sitting on the welcome mat. It was thick, sealed, my name printed in clean black letters. Marcus Bennett. No return address, just a law firm logo stamped in the corner. I picked it up, carried it inside, and set it on the kitchen counter like it might bite. The place was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No TV, no music, no Tasha moving around, humming while she cooked. Only the low hum of the fridge and the sound of my own breathing. I grabbed a pair of scissors from the drawer and cut the edge open. The first page had a bold heading, Petition for Temporary Protective Order. My eyes moved down the page, faster than my mind wanted to go. Emotional abuse, threatening behavior, fear for personal safety, pattern of intimidation. Then I saw Tasha's name. Her statement was attached. 3 pages, signed. I didn't read it like a betrayed husband. I read it like a compliance officer reading a false report, looking for the structure, the language, the places where someone else's fingerprints showed. The wording felt polished, not her voice, not the way she spoke when she was tired or nervous. It sounded like someone had coached her, shaped her fear into legal phrases. My throat tightened anyway. I sank to the kitchen floor with the papers in my hands, back against the cabinet, and kept reading. Each sentence stacked on top of the last like bricks meant to wall me off from my own life. This wasn't random. It wasn't an emotional decision after a fight. It was a plan. Christmas night, the police report, the church rumor, the HR complaint, now a restraining order. Step by step, paper trail, public image. My name dragged through every system that mattered. I set the pages down, stared at the tile, and forced my breathing to slow. No yelling, no pacing, no phone calls in a panic. A man doesn't get to lose control when someone is trying to prove he's unstable. I stood up, washed my hands like I'd touched something dirty, and opened my laptop. The Savannah folder stared back at me. I dragged the scanned pages into it and renamed the folder with a date. December 25th. Then I added another folder. Legal. My phone buzzed. A text from Tasha. Please don't come to my mom's. We can talk when things calm down. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, because anything I wrote could become evidence. A couple hours later, I drove to a diner near Decatur that stayed open late. It wasn't fancy. Vinyl booths, tired waitress, menus with coffee stains. The kind of place where people kept their heads down and didn't ask questions. Elena was already there, sitting with her coat still on, a legal pad in front of her. She slid into the booth across from me without getting up. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I got served, I replied, and handed her the packet. She scanned it quickly. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. Restraining order request, she said. And they're tying it to your job. That's not an accident. I stared at the table. They're turning me into something I'm not. Elena tapped her pen once. Then you stop acting like this is a marriage problem, she said. This is a documentation problem. She wrote 3 words in big letters and turned the pad toward me. Timeline, evidence, counsel. You need a family lawyer, she continued, separate from your work counsel. And Marcus, do not speak to Deborah. Do not speak to Tasha unless your attorney says so. Everything goes through paper. I nodded, because I already knew she was right. The waitress poured coffee. Elena didn't touch hers. She kept going. You need to remember every time Deborah borrowed money, she said. Every time you signed something without reading closely. Every shared account. Every transfer. Every email. A memory hit me. Deborah sitting at our kitchen table months ago, smiling like she was embarrassed. Just a short loan, she'd said. For the Charlotte house repairs. You know we'll pay it back. Another one followed. Tasha asking me to sign bank paperwork. It's just to make the account easier to manage, she'd said. My mom knows how these things work. And that house in Charlotte, always mentioned like a prize I didn't deserve. Always hanging in the air like leverage. The pieces started to connect in my head, not as drama, but as motive. Elena leaned forward. You can walk away quietly, she said. Or you can take control of the narrative before it eats you alive. Outside the diner, the air had gotten colder. I sat in my car afterward, hands resting on the steering wheel, and stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Then I opened my notes app and typed the first line of my timeline, careful and steady. December 25th, Savannah, 9:43 p.m. The next morning, I stopped answering anything that wasn't necessary. No calls from unknown numbers, no texts from Tasha. No reactions to Deborah's emails. Silence, but not the kind that came from fear. This was controlled, strategic, the kind you use when you're building a case. I made 2 appointments before lunch. First was a family attorney in Midtown Atlanta, recommended by Elena, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a voice that didn't waste words. She reviewed the restraining order petition, flipped through it once, then looked at me over her glasses. You're being framed as volatility, she said. So we respond with structure, no emotion, only facts. I nodded. I can do facts. The second appointment was a consult with a defamation attorney, who also handled workplace interference. I didn't even need to explain much. Once he saw the HR complaint language and the protective order request, he tapped the page with his pen. "They're tying your reputation to your employment," he said. "That's a deliberate pressure point." By the time I got back home, my laptop was open and my mind had shifted into a familiar mode. Investigate, document, preserve. I pulled footage from my Ring camera. Not just the night I came home alone, but the days leading up to Savannah. Times Deborah had showed up unannounced. The moment she took my phone and scrolled through it like it belonged to her. The second my suitcase hit the porch, caught in the background when Tasha recorded a family video earlier that evening. Next came the iPad Tasha and I shared. I searched through old messages I'd seen by accident months ago. The ones I ignored because I told myself it wasn't my business. Deborah's texts to Tasha weren't subtle when you read them back to back. "Don't let him talk over you. You know what needs to happen. If you want the house, you do what I say." Then I opened the bank statements. Transfers marked as loan, small enough not to trigger alerts, always landing in the same place. An LLC in Charlotte I'd never heard of. I wrote down the dates and amounts, copied the account numbers, saved the PDFs. My hands didn't shake while I worked. That part surprised me. The grief was still there, but it stayed underneath everything, quiet and contained, like a bruise you don't press on. Things started getting strange by midweek. A gray sedan sat across the street from my building for 2 nights in a row. When I stepped outside to take out trash, it rolled forward and disappeared around the corner. My email account sent an alert about a login attempt from North Carolina. I changed passwords, added 2-factor authentication, and called my IT friend for advice without telling him why. Then Jaden called. "Dad," he said, voice smaller than usual. "A lady called my school asking if you were coming to the next parent thing."
"What lady?" I asked.
"I don't know. Miss Hall said she didn't give her anything." My jaw tightened. "You did nothing wrong," I told him. "If anyone asks, you tell them to talk to your mom, okay?" He said okay, but I could hear the worry in his breathing. That afternoon, my attorney sent a formal cease and desist letter to Deborah, demanding she stop contact and stop spreading accusations. Another letter went to the HR department, requesting that any inquiries stay within policy and be documented. I logged into the bank account, removed Deborah's access to anything she'd been helping with, and moved Jaden's college savings into the trust I'd set up years ago, back when I promised myself I'd never leave my son exposed again. Later, standing on my balcony with my phone in my hand, Atlanta traffic humming below, I watched cars move like nothing in the world was changing. My thumb hovered over Tasha's contact, then slid away as I opened the Notes app and added another timestamp to the timeline. My badge didn't work at the turnstile. I tapped it twice before I realized what that meant. A security guard approached with an awkward half smile, the kind people wear when they don't want to be part of your problem. "Marcus," he said quietly, "HR asked me to escort you upstairs." I didn't argue. I followed him like I was visiting my own life as a guest. Karen from HR met me outside conference room B again. Same table, same neutral tone, different words. "We're placing you on paid administrative leave while we complete the investigation," she said. "This is standard procedure." Standard. My mouth stayed closed for a beat, because the wrong reaction could be written down and misinterpreted. "How long?" I asked.
"We can't give a timeline yet."
A paper slid toward me. Instructions. Do not contact colleagues. Do not access company systems. Be available for follow-up. My signature went at the bottom like I was signing a receipt for a package I didn't order. On the way out, I passed 2 coworkers in the lobby. One glanced at me, then looked away too quickly. The other gave a stiff nod, like he wasn't sure which version of me he was supposed to believe. I drove to Freedom Park and parked near the trail. People moved through their day like nothing had happened, walking dogs, pushing strollers, talking on earbuds. I sat behind the wheel and felt the absurdity of it all pressed down. I'd built my career on being careful, on ethics, on being the guy who kept other people from making bad decisions, and now I was the threat. My phone rang. Tasha's name. I answered without saying hello. "Marcus," she said, breathy and strained. "Please, I didn't want it to go this far." "Then why did it?" My voice stayed low. "Why did you sign anything?" A pause. I heard her swallow. "My mom said if I didn't, I'd lose everything," she whispered. The house in Charlotte. The trust. She said she'd cut me off, and she can. She always has. I panicked. That wasn't love speaking. That was a child who'd never been allowed to say no. I closed my eyes, held the steering wheel tighter. Did you tell her to call the police? I asked. Silence. That was answer enough. Another call came in while we were still connected. Jaden's school. I told Tasha I had to go. The secretary's voice sounded polite, the way schools try to sound when they're delivering something ugly. Mr. Bennett, we received a letter regarding Jaden, she said, from a Ms. Deborah Lane. It states that you're under investigation and may be unstable, she said carefully. It requests that you not attend school events until things are clarified. I couldn't breathe for a second. Heat rose behind my eyes, sharp and fast. Deborah didn't just want me gone. She wanted my son to look at me differently. I forced my voice back into shape. I need a copy of that letter, I said. And from this moment on, any concerns about me go through my attorney. Please note that in Jaden's file. Of course, she said quickly, as if she could sense the edge. I hung up and stared at the steering wheel. A part of me wanted to drive straight to Charlotte and pound on Deborah's front door until my knuckles split. Instead, I opened my contacts, called my attorney, and spoke in short sentences that didn't shake. When I drove home later, the apartment felt smaller than it had the day before. I sat at the kitchen table, phone beside me, the HR paperwork stacked next to the restraining order petition, and my timeline open on the laptop as I added a new entry with the school's timestamp. Elena showed up at my door with a paper folder tucked under her arm like she was dropping off homework. No hug, no small talk, just business. I didn't sleep, she said, stepping inside. And neither should you. She laid the folder on my kitchen table, right beside the HR leave notice and the restraining order petition. The stack looked ridiculous, like my life had turned into paperwork overnight. What is this? I asked. Elena pulled out a printed document with a header from a nonprofit in Charlotte. Deborah's name sat in the middle of it, clean and official. Treasurer, financial administrator, authorized signer. My eyes narrowed. She's handling money for a community organization, Elena said, and I ran the LLC name you found in your bank statements. She slid another page forward, a simple summary of filings and bank references. Same LLC, same Charlotte address, same pattern, small transfers, consistent timing, nothing flashy, just steady leakage. It felt like swallowing ice. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel relief. I felt confirmation, the kind that makes you realize this was never about me not fitting in. This was about control and cash. You're sure? I asked. As sure as I can be without subpoena power, Elena said, which is why you don't touch this yourself. She pointed at the documents like they were hot. If you confront her, she'll call it blackmail, she said. She'll cry in church, say you're threatening an old woman, and the story will flip again. I nodded once, because I could already see it happening. So I did what I always did when someone tried to bend the truth. I let the process do the talking. My attorney sent formal requests for records. Another letter went out requesting an independent audit for the nonprofit. The defamation attorney drafted a complaint outline, not to file immediately, but to make sure every claim was clean, every supporting document preserved. Deborah kept working her side. A church member I barely knew posted a vague message on Facebook about protecting women from men who hide behind titles. Someone else commented a praying hands emoji and wrote, "We believe you, Deborah." Tasha added a supplemental statement to her petition. Elena forwarded it to me with one line. She's doubling down. Her new claims were worse, more emotional language, more hints that I was unpredictable, more phrases that sounded like they came from someone else's mouth. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself online. I didn't call anyone to clear my name. Instead, I opened my laptop and built the timeline like a case file. Police call in Savannah. Deborah's email with the property list. The anonymous HR complaint. The restraining order petition. The letter to Jaden's school. Bank transfers to the Charlotte LLC. The nonprofit filings showing Deborah's role. Then, Elena sent one more thing. A screenshot of an email Deborah had accidentally forwarded to Tasha, still showing the calendar invite at the bottom. A meeting with a lawyer, 2 days before Christmas. I stared at that date longer than anything else. They hadn't reacted to me. They'd prepared for me. I copied the screenshot into the folder, labeled it pre-planning, and sent it straight to my attorney without commentary. A few hours later, I walked into a coffee shop in Midtown, ordered a black coffee I didn't taste, and sat at a corner table with my laptop open. Not to spiral, to organize,
To make sure every piece was where it belonged.
When I left, I didn't feel brave. I felt ready. My phone buzzed with another email notification, and my thumb swiped it open before I reached my car. The elevator in the courthouse smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. I stood in the corner with my file folder tucked against my ribs, listening to two strangers whisper about child support like it was weather. When the doors opened, I stepped out and followed my attorney down the hallway. She didn't talk much, neither did I. Everything that needed saying was already in the documents. Family court wasn't dramatic. No wooden gavels slamming every 10 seconds. No big speeches. Just quiet people waiting for their name to be called, holding their lives in manila folders. My case got called right after a woman in a nursing uniform finished crying into a tissue. We walked in. Deborah sat on the opposite side, dressed like she was attending Sunday service. Soft scarf, neat hair, that careful expression of worry she used when she wanted an audience to see her as gentle. Tasha sat beside her, shoulders rounded, eyes down, hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked pale. Deborah looked at me like she was looking at something unpredictable. "Your Honor," she said when the judge acknowledged her, "we're afraid of him. He's a dangerous man."
I didn't move, didn't react.
I kept my eyes on the judge. Tasha didn't speak at first. She stared at the table as if the wood could hide her. Deborah's attorney handed over a printout of text messages, a short clip of words, stripped of context, arranged like proof. "He intimidates her," the attorney said. "He uses fear to control. He has a temper." My chest tightened anyway, not because I believed it, but because I knew how a room can shift when someone says dangerous about a black man in a suit. For a few seconds, the air felt thinner. Then my attorney stood up. "Your Honor, we have evidence," she said. "Not accusations, evidence."
She didn't start with my feelings. She started with dates.
The Ring camera footage came first. Time-stamped video showing me standing on the porch while Deborah stayed inside, calm, and the police arriving minutes later. The recording picked up Deborah's voice, clear enough to hear her say, "He's been aggressive," while I remained outside with my hands visible, asking only for my medication. Next came the email Deborah had sent her own lawyer before Christmas, the one with the calendar invite attached. My attorney didn't read it dramatically. She simply submitted it and pointed out the language. The respondent's mother-in-law discussed making sure he loses his job prior to any alleged incident. Deborah's face twitched. Bank statements followed, transfers marked as loan, all routed to the Charlotte LLC. Then the preliminary audit summary from the independent accountant Elena had found. Numbers, patterns, dates. No opinions, just facts that didn't match Deborah's image. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Lane," he said, "can you explain these transfers?"
Deborah's mouth opened, closed, opened again.
"Those are family matters," she said, voice thinner now. "He's twisting." "This is not about twisting," the judge replied. "This is about whether you used legal action to retaliate and whether these allegations were made in good faith." Deborah tried to recover, tried to pull the room back into her story. "He's trying to take what doesn't belong to him," she said. "He's been threatening me." The judge didn't look impressed. Tasha finally lifted her head, eyes glassy. She glanced at me for half a second, then dropped her gaze again like it burned. When the judge called a short recess to review the materials, my attorney leaned close and whispered, "Stay calm. Let her talk. She's doing the damage herself." I nodded once. Outside in the hallway, Deborah rushed past me without her scarf arranged so neatly anymore. Her heels clicked faster than before. Tasha trailed behind her, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. I stood there with my folder under my arm, reading the next email from my attorney's office on my phone, while the courthouse coffee cart rolled by, its wheels squeaking softly across the tile. Karen from HR called me on a Tuesday morning. No apology, no warmth, just procedure. "Marcus, the investigation has concluded," she said. "We found the complaint unsubstantiated. There are also indicators of malicious intent. You're cleared to return to work immediately." I thanked her. Simple, professional. Then I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a moment, staring at my laptop like I didn't quite trust good news anymore. My attorney emailed an hour later with the next steps: defamation, workplace interference, formal demands, a clean paper trail that didn't depend on anyone believing me. Charlotte moved too. The nonprofit board placed Deborah on leave pending a full audit. The language in the notice was careful, but the message wasn't. The community that once treated her like an untouchable pillar started shifting away, quietly, the same way people leave a room when smoke starts creeping in. Elena texted me one sentence: "She's losing her grip." Tasha sent her message that night. Not a text, an email. Long, emotional, full of, "I didn't mean to," and "I was scared," and "Please just meet me once." She wrote about memories, about promises, about how her mother controlled her since she was a child. She tried to make it sound like we were both victims of the same woman. I read it once, then I forwarded it to my attorney. My response went out the next morning, written by my lawyer and approved by me. All communication will proceed through counsel. Any discussion of reconciliation is not on the table. We will address separation and property through the proper legal process. No anger in it, no cruelty, just a closed door. A few days later, Jaden stayed with me for the weekend. We walked the Atlanta Beltline like we always did when I needed to clear my head. He talked about his friends, his coach, a science project he didn't understand. I listened, nodded, asked questions. Let him be 12. We stopped for ice cream near Ponce City Market. Jaden picked something bright and messy, then laughed when it dripped onto his sleeve. "Mom's gonna kill me," he said, grinning. "Wipe it off before she sees it," I replied. That laugh, simple, careless, felt like oxygen. Not because I'd won, because I didn't have to plead for respect anymore. Deborah's downfall didn't come with fireworks. It came with consequences, an audit notice, a removal vote, calls she couldn't return because people stopped taking them, church friends who suddenly had excuses, a reputation that couldn't survive paperwork. The following week, I drove Jaden to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport early in the morning. He was flying to my mother's place for a couple weeks, a break from all the tension. We stood in line at TSA, him dragging his small suitcase, me holding his boarding pass and ID. At the security entrance, he hugged me tight. "You okay, Dad?" he asked.
I pressed my hand to the back of his head. "Yeah," I said, "I'm good."
He nodded like he believed me, then disappeared into the line of travelers. I watched until I couldn't see him anymore, then turned toward the exit, phone in my pocket, shoulders steady, already thinking about the work emails I'd missed and the quiet apartment waiting back in Atlanta.